Okay, so today we're going to discuss why certain foods are not allowed on this program. It can be confusing because a lot of the foods we're going to discuss today are technically healthy foods, but unfortunately, there are some healthy foods that can still be harmful to certain people's gut microbiomes, and we're going to go over why. Because I very consistently have patients with a leaky gut that actually eat a fairly clean, healthy diet. It's just that maybe they're including foods that are not right for them at this time. So, we have come to a point in society where we have chemically modified our food to the point where a lot of healthy foods are now not good for us. Like you can see in this picture, this is different types of butter, and that is ants eating the butter. So you can see just natural, regular, butter. All of the ants went to it. None of them went to the reduced fat or the margarine, right? So reduced fat butter would be like a little bit modified by us. Margarine would be like a completely chemically modified product, right? Like it was actually, a lot of those types of fats were built to be lubricants on airplanes during World War II. And then they're like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden now we have all these different oils and nothing to do with them because we're not at war anymore. And so they started converting some of these oils to more digestible forms to try to make it so that we would eat them. But unfortunately, they're not nature. Our body does not recognize them as real food, and it reacts to them in a very severe way sometimes that can cause inflammation and disease. So we really want to be eating foods that are as nature made as possible, the least chemically modified as possible. And this is a lot of times why people can go overseas and eat a lot of different foods and be like, oh, I'm totally fine and I didn't have any gut problems. Well, a lot of the chemically modified foods that we use in the United States are illegal in other countries. So let's go through some of the main offenders in our food that can trigger problems with our gut. So absolutely, number one is going to be sugar. Um, Sugar is extremely overconsumed today because it is added so much to our food. Because let's be real, it makes everything taste better. We have sugar in everything from our lunch meat to our yogurts to our oatmeal in the morning. Like a lot of these things that we think are quote unquote healthy foods have a lot of added sugar. Even the American Heart Association thinks that we should eat less than 25 grams of added sugar a day. And honestly, most people hit that by breakfast. You get one Starbucks latte and you're already at about 45 grams. You have, one can of pop or soda and you're already at about 40 grams. So it's like we hit that 25 grams of added sugar usually super quick. Most people that eat less than 25 grams of sugar a day are generally pretty healthy and have very little problem balancing their waistline. But unfortunately, like I said, even a tablespoon of peanut butter has, I think, 9 grams of sugar. So, we get these sneaky spots where it's really spiking our sugar, even when we don't think we are, right? We think, like, oh, I'm having peanut butter, like that's protein, right? No, surprise, they added sugar to it. Or, I eat my ketchup every day. Well, every tablespoon of ketchup has another 5 grams of sugar. Some people eat 25 grams of sugar just in ketchup every day. So it's really easy to hit that 25 grams. But unfortunately, what this does is it overfeeds certain bacteria in our gut, like yeast and parasites, and it can lead to infections and a lot of excess bloating and discomfort because what yeast does with sugar is it kind of ferments it into alcohol. So a lot of times your stomach will become this giant like beer making factory if you're always having sugar, and then you're always going to feel kind of hungover and you're not going to feel very energetic because your body's basically like creating its own sugar. This is especially true with a lot of kids, especially autistic kids. They've done studies where they give them sugar and then they'll test their blood alcohol content and they will actually blow that they are too drunk to drive. And that's actually just from the bacteria in their stomach and yeast fermenting the sugar into alcohol. So excess sugar in our diet is harmful for many, many reasons. So most hidden sugar in the diet is going to be from drinks. Almost all of it is going to be from pop, soda, juice, even a lot of the quote unquote healthier drinks. Like I challenge you to go into a gas station and try to find a drink with less than 20 grams of sugar. Pretty much the only thing you're going to be able to get for that is like unsweetened tea and water. I mean, obviously, a lot of the diet varieties are going to have sugar alcohols, but you get my point. Pretty much every drink is going to have some kind of sugar in it. So when I tell people like, "Oh, you need to quit sugar," they always assume like, "Oh, I just need to quit eating dessert." But you can see on this chart that like baked goods and desserts is really like 20% or less of where we get the added sugar from. Most of it is from other sources, like it's been added to our condiments or our drinks. So, as many of you have experienced, probably, sugar is fairly addictive. And a lot of that is because you eat sugar, it brings your blood sugar up, it releases endorphins, it makes your brain feel good, it gives you energy. But unfortunately, sugar is not a slow releasing molecule. It gets digested very quickly and then it makes you hungry again within a half hour. So then you will want to eat it again. And then this whole like, I want a snack every hour, half hour cycle just keeps on going and going and going because you don't have anything that's going to last you energetically longer than that 30-minute hit that you get from like the sugar or the carbohydrate. So if you feel like you're the kind of person that has to eat every, hour or every couple hours, it's probably because you're just eating too much sugar and or just too much carbs in general and not enough protein and fat, which is going to last you longer energetically. Um, we'll get to a slide about that. So this is just a photo of how sugar stimulates the brain similar to drugs. And honestly, some people will have withdrawals similar to coming off of a drug. People will get severe headaches, they'll get body shakes, they'll get fevers, they'll get angry. You know, we coming off of it can be very severe for a lot of people. But yeah, when we're trying to build energy in the body, it's like building a fire. So when we build a fire, we have the logs, we have the kindling, and we have the paper. So fat is our logs, protein is our kindling, carbohydrates is our paper. So as most of you know, when you put a piece of newspaper on the fire, it burns off in 2 seconds. You have to add more newspaper to get it going, right? Maybe if you add cardboard, it'll last a little bit longer, but still gone pretty quickly. The paper is going to be like sugar. The cardboard is maybe going to be like sweet potatoes or like fruit or something, right? So it lasts a little bit longer, but it's still gone fairly quickly, right? So even if you're eating the healthier version and you're giving your fire the cardboard instead of the paper, still probably not going to last very long energetically. Protein is those, little sticks that you put on the fire, and that's what builds the heat to light the logs, right? That's why they say that protein is required for fat burning activities. It's because it creates the heat required to get into fat burning mode, right? And then the logs being the fat, once you get the logs burning, they burn all night long, right? And that's the same thing in your body. Once your body becomes a fat burning machine, you have energy, never ending, where you're not having these carb crashes and you're not having these sugar cravings, and things are just more stable because once that log gets burning, it gives you fuel for a long time before it runs out, unlike um, the other two categories, which burn off pretty quickly. And that's also the problem when people will only eat maybe chicken and fish, right? Because chicken and fish is mostly protein and not a lot of fat. It's going to last you longer than just the paper, but it's still not going to last you as long as some type of like beef or bison or pork or salmon or like some kind of fattier meat that's going to last you long energetically. So besides just balancing your energy level, sugar also is a huge contributor to weight loss resistance. Almost every single person, if they come in saying, I'm weight loss resistant, it doesn't matter what I do, I can't lose weight. It's usually because you have a hormone that is dysregulated called insulin, and insulin is our hormone that helps us deal with the sugar that we eat. So insulin job is to store sugar. So it'll store sugar in your muscles, which is a good thing because you want sugar in your muscles to like give you energy if you, for example, like go for a run. Unfortunately, most of us go way far past this refilling the muscles with sugar part, and then our bloodstream gets overrun with sugar and your body runs out of places to put it. So it starts depositing it in your liver, giving you fatty liver, or it starts depositing it around your heart, giving you heart problems, or around your stomach, giving you indigestion. So it starts depositing fat in inappropriate places, and instead of just like giving you sugar in your muscles like is required just for exercise. So a lot of people, in order to see weight loss results, do have to have like a complete elimination of sugar, at least for a couple weeks to a couple months, to get this hormone under control. Once we get this hormone under control, then we might be able to handle a little bit of sugar, like I said, to refill our muscles for exercise purposes. But we really have to resensitize this hormone to reach weight loss in a lot of people. And in order to resensitize this hormone, we have to get sugar completely out. Like some people have to completely eliminate sugar and go all the way to like a keto carnivore situation in order to get this hormone under control. So insulin being overstimulated by sugar leads to something called insulin resistance. This is a big driver of a lot of cholesterol problems, a lot of sleep problems, just really most blood work problems come back to this as being the triggering factor. It is triggering factor for a lot of heart disease, poor circulation, PCOS. The list goes on because an oversaturation of sugar literally caramelizes your organs. It can caramelize your brain. It can give people like dementia, Alzheimer's, all these types of things. So you really can overdose every organ in your body with too much sugar if this hormone gets out of control. That's why people will have diabetic ulcers, for example, where they'll get like an open sore on their foot that won't heal. And you'll go, okay, well, why is that? Well, it's because their body's literally being caramelized by too much sugar because their insulin can't get the sugar out of the bloodstream. So it can affect any tissue in your body, not just your pancreas. So insulin is a very confusing hormone. I remember had a hard time learning it, for board exams and everything. So I tried to come up with a analogy to help you guys out. So this is the best that I can do. So we're going to call this the insulin bear. All right. So we know in the springtime, bears get hungry. They go out foraging for like the honey and the blueberries, right? We'll go for the stereotypes. And then once the bears eat enough of that, sugary, high dense food, or even like the fatty salmon or something, they will go sleep for the winter and then they come back out when they're empty again. That's kind of how insulin works, right? So insulin will come out when the sugar is present, right? Like when the blueberries and the honey are present, and it'll gobble all of them up and try to store them for energy for later, whether that's as fat or as sugar stores in your muscle or whatever. And then once insulin gets full, it kind of stops responding, right? It's going to stop going out and reaching for these sugars, and it's going to stop storing them. It's going to go into hibernation. And then the unfortunate thing is when insulin goes into hibernation, but there's still a lot of sugar in the system, that sugar becomes poisonous to our system and starts causing these problems that I was saying, like the diabetic ulcer type issues. But the only way that the bear is going to come back out of hiding is if you starve the system of sugar for long enough that it gets hungry enough to come back out again, right? And so this is the tricky thing with weight loss is, some people might just have to starve the insulin bear for a couple days. Some people might have to starve the insulin bear for months. I mean, you'll have people that'll say, oh, it took me 2 months before keto started working for me. And it's like, yeah, because it took 2 months for the insulin to like start getting back under control. You could also think of it as the insulin squirrel hiding its nuts, right? So if the squirrel is filling its tree with nuts and then the tree is full, it starts to overflow, and then he has to go find somewhere else to store the nuts that might not be as ideal. That's kind of like what insulin is doing in your body. It tries to store sugar in your liver and your muscles to give you energy for later. But unfortunately, once like the liver and the muscles get full, it's going to have to find somewhere else to store it, right? It's going to start storing it in places that are less ideal, kind of like when the squirrel runs out of space in his little hole. So the main stomach issue that gets caused by overconsumption of sugar is called SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So this is what I was mentioning earlier, where I said that, like the yeast and the bacteria in your stomach can actually start fermenting your food, fermenting sugar, right? And when it ferments sugar, it creates this like off gas of, poisonous chemicals similar to alcohol. Um, and that off gassing can cause all of the things in this picture, right? It can cause extreme nausea. I've had people that have puking incidents from it. It can cause diarrhea or constipation, depending on what type of gas is being released. Obviously, like I said, it is going to create gas, but it will lead to huge vitamin and mineral deficiencies, which will actually make your carb cravings worse because you're nutrient deficient. And then you want to eat more sugar, and it just kind of keeps self perpetuating the problem. In your guys' packet, I have a list of the foods that are triggers for this condition, things that you might have to eliminate. So you'll want to see the FODMAP lists that I put in the packet if this sounds like you. But basically, SIBO is just one type of leaky gut that is specific for sugar and carbohydrate consumption. So it's for people that are like, okay, every single time, I eat any type of carb, I get extremely bloated. Um, Obviously, I think most people get bloated if they overconsume carbs, right? Like we've all experienced getting bloated after like a big holiday weekend where we eat a bunch of junk we're not supposed to. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about like this person eats an apple and they're miserable for multiple days, kind of a thing. Um, it's a very, very triggery reaction. It's not just from, overeating on party weekends or something. So the FODMAP stands for different types of sugar that can trigger the system. So like I said, I have this list added for you guys, but these are going to be the sugar containing foods that overstimulate this condition and make it much, much worse. A lot of it can even be from things like milk, because people don't think of as milk being sugary, but a lot of times the reason that we eliminate milk on these programs is because lactose, especially when not digested, especially when people are lactose intolerant, can extremely dysregulate the blood sugar and cause this small intestine bacterial overgrowth condition. So when we're talking about like what sugar is going to be better for us, uh, we want to think of like we want sugar from the earth. We want natural sugars, right? So the best option is going to be maple syrup, because maple syrup is going to be a good natural sweetener that does not overstimulate the small intestine bacterial overgrowth. Honey, agave, figs, dates, all of those are like really, clean, healthy sugars, but unfortunately, those ones do have a lot of fructose, which can trigger the condition we were just talking about. The best 0-calorie options are going to be the stevia and the monk fruit. Everything on the right side here is going to be, fake man-made sugars that are actually like really bad for your brain. A lot of them are neurotoxins that can actually cause dementia when consumed long term. They can attack your joints, cause arthritis. The list goes on and on. Like I said, it's a man-made food. Our body doesn't recognize it, so it causes a lot of inflammatory reactions. So you really have to be careful with over consuming a lot of the sweeteners on the right. And especially when you're trying to fix your gut, you need to get rid of them completely. That's why I have a lot of people quit their protein powders or quit their, sports supplements even during this program, because even a lot of those like quote unquote healthier sports products are sweetened with some of these options. So the good news is when coming off of sugar is your taste buds do change, right? So your taste buds become acclimatized to like the top 20 foods that you eat every week, right? So if you change what those top 20 foods are, your taste buds are going to change with that. That and your gut bacteria will change as you go through this program. So our gut bacteria is actually what tells our brain what we're craving and tells our brain what to eat, right? So if you have a lot of yeast in your stomach, it is going to tell your brain we want more sugar, because that's what yeast eats to live is sugar, right? So it's going to say eat more, eat more, eat more. Whereas if we have more of these bacteria in our stomach that eat like healthy fibers and help us, digest our B vitamins, it's going to make us crave something else. So a good example story of this is with my mom. My whole life would never order a steak at a restaurant. Um, she just was always eating fish or just vegetables, or she like skipped a lot of meals. Always had a sugar drawer, right? Always ate a lot of chocolate chips, kind of a thing. And we started telling her, you really need to eat some healthy fat to balance your hormones and to like regulate your blood sugar and to like just have energy more long term so you don't have to snack. And we put her through one of our weight loss programs here called Chirothin, which is very similar to what we're doing with the leaky gut program as far as like what foods are allowed and what foods are not allowed. And now after that program, she will actually order a steak and she will actually enjoy it, and she actually like wants to have steak occasionally. And like I said, that's never been the case for my whole life. So, as your gut bacteria changes, as your gut becomes more healthy, you can change the foods that you like. So I always encourage like go through the different aisles of the grocery store and just try new things as you go through this program, because you might be surprised at some of the things that you like that you didn't like before. I remember the first time that I did this program, when I came home for a break between semesters, I went to my mom's candy drawer and tried to eat a Reese's. I was very excited because I was like, I love chocolate. And I took a bite of the Reese's and I spit it out in the trash can. And I remember looking at my mom and being like, "Is this Reese's bad? Has it gone rancid? Has it been in the drawer for too long?" And she's like, "No, I have no idea what you're talking about." But what it was is I hadn't had fake oils in so long that when I had the fake oils that are in a Reese's, my body actually tasted it and said, "Oh my God, this is foreign food. This is trash. Like, don't eat this. This is gross." And to this day, I cannot eat like regular candy because so much of it has things like the margarine in it and the fake oil that just taste rancid to me now. Now I have to have, the super bougie, dark chocolate with, no added weird oils or just with coconut oil or something, because otherwise it tastes weird to my mouth to have like the weird fake man-made oils in it. So your taste buds will change based on what you experience. All right, so coming into gluten. So gluten sensitivity is something that you will probably find on your genetics test. Your genetics test will differentiate between whether maybe you have a high risk of just an allergy or if you have a high risk of full-blown celiacs. If your test comes back that you have celiacs, then we have to have a conversation about extreme elimination of this product. But most gluten is going to be found in the pictured foods, right? So a lot of our cereals, crackers, breads, baked goods, pastas, sauces, a lot of alcohol. Those are the things you're going to have to eliminate if you're sensitive to gluten. If you have celiacs, then sometimes we have to, even look into more foods than this list. All of them are in the appendix of my book that you all receive. And we can have a one-on-one gluten conversation if necessary when we get your genetics back. But what is the difference between celiac disease and gluten, um, you know, allergy, right? So celiac disease is something that can attack any tissue in your body. So it completely flattens out the cilia in your stomach, which are these frond-like projections that help you like grab and absorb food. When those fronds are gone, it's very difficult to digest and absorb nutrients. So you will end up with like full-blown nutrient deficiencies where you have a lot of vitamins that are depleted. You'll get low in B12 and vitamin K, especially. So you'll have no energy. It will start to attack other organs in your body. So it's really big for attacking thyroid and causing thyroid autoimmunity. It can attack the brain and cause balance issues in some people. I've seen it cause heart problems in some people. So like it can really attack different organ systems. So it's a very severe condition. That means you have to completely get rid of gluten, whereas you have, your regular allergy type things where, people eat gluten and they get like a little bit of bloating or their bowel changes a little bit. And, those you're going to be uncomfortable if you eat the gluten, but you're not going to die. But if you have celiacs, it is this very severe reaction. You might as well think of it as like an anaphylactic reaction where it's going to cause some very severe side effects. All right, next we're getting into dairy and why we can't have dairy on this program. So the number one reason we don't eat dairy is because there's so much estrogen added to it. If you can find, a super organic, like straight from the farm version or like a raw version, then it's not going to be as bad because there's not as much added to it and there's not as many chemical modifications like we do with pasteurizing. But unfortunately, most of what you find at the grocery store is going to be highly modified and not very digestible. So it leads to a lot of GI upset, especially with like constipation in kids. It can even lead to bedwetting in kids. It's very dense with estrogen, which most of us already have too much estrogen just based on the environment that we live in or taking birth control. And estrogen really overburdens the liver and the gallbladder. Like dairy is one of the number one foods that's going to trigger gallbladder reactions. A lot of people are lactose intolerant, and when lactose gets into the small intestine, it can cause that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Lactose can actually cause diabetes in really sensitive individuals because it's just undigested sugar getting into your bloodstream and digestive tract. And it's just a mucus producing food that can cause you to be kind of just stuffed up after you eat it. Most people notice that, if you eat ice cream and then you're stuffed up 20 minutes later, it's because dairy is a very mucus producing food. That and dairy just is a lot of calories if your main goal is weight loss. Smaller subcategory that tends to not be as big of an issue is nightshades. So nightshades are a type of food that produces something called an anti-nutrient. An anti-nutrient is a protective coating to the plant that is trying to protect the plant from being eaten, right? So this is a good example is going to be hot peppers, right? So the reason hot peppers are spicy and then they have that like, shiny outer coating that is hard to digest, it is to prevent from being eaten. It is to deter, animals and insects from eating it, right? That's the reason that it produces some of those molecules that makes it spicy, which is a lot of fun to eat. But unfortunately, a lot of people will notice it gives them heartburn or it causes stomach reactions because that food is really meant to be a protective coating to the plant. It's not supposed to be like a nutrient source for us. So this is the foods that are higher in those types of nutrients, and certain individuals will notice when they eat these things that they will get usually heartburn, sometimes gas, bloating, fatigue, achy joints, those type of things. But I would say definitely heartburn is going to be at the top of the list for reactions to these. So another anti-nutrient food is going to be alcohol. That's why we don't have alcohol included in this program. Alcohol is probably the biggest anti-nutrient because it steals our vitamins, especially our B vitamins, and depletes us. It makes us crave sugar for up to 4 days after consumption. And it just really can kill a lot of the good bacteria in your stomach. So it makes it harder to have a healthy gut the more alcohol that you drink. And then we're going to get into lectins and oxalates next. So oxalates are what cause a lot of stone formation in the body. So whether you're talking about like kidney stones or gallstones or just even excess calcium deposits anywhere in the body can be caused by these. And this is the one that really gets people because a lot of it is really healthy foods. Like they'll say, okay, eat a lot of beets because beets are great for heart health. Well, beets are also high in oxalates and can lead to kidney stones in some people. Like tea is supposed to be healthier than coffee sometimes. Well, tea is super high in oxalates and can cause kidney stones in some people. So if you're susceptible to stone formation, this is going to be a really important list for you to consider because you're going to want to avoid a lot of the high oxalate foods, even if they're quote unquote healthier foods. So what are lectins? Lectins is the protective coating on the outside of grains. It is easiest to see on like a bean, right? So when you buy beans, you're supposed to soak them to get a lot of the poisonous chemicals off of them. If you don't soak beans before they're eaten, they can actually put you in the hospital. That's how poisonous they are. But most of us don't recognize this because we buy them in a can and they've already been soaking for months, right? But if you eat beans raw, you can actually poison yourself from that protective outer coating, which is called the lectin. So lectins can stick to different areas in the body. They're really big for causing grain brain because they do produce a lot of like sticky adhesions like in the brain. They can cause a lot of like severe brain fog. And especially when you have leaky gut and these things are allowed to get into your bloodstream, then they really can cause like sticky inflammation reactions to any organ system in the body. Um, but the brain is definitely where people usually notice it the most. And that's why a lot of times when you go like keto or paleo or carnivore, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I have so much just brain clarity. I just feel like, my world has been opened up and I can use so much more, is because that you don't have these lectins that are, fogging up your brain constantly. This is a quote that I found from the National Institute of Health. It says, overall, the majority of studies suggest a positive association of whole grain consumption on measures of cognitive decline, mood, and anxiety. What this means is that eating too much grains and eating too much lectins can cause you to, have dementia, have mood problems, have anxiety problems, be depressed, have memory issues, all these things. So elimination of a lot of grains like we're doing through this program does really promote better brain clarity. One of the reasons that grains in our country can be so much worse than others is because glyphosate. Glyphosate is a pesticide that is added to a lot of things. It's, Roundup. And the unfortunate thing is when we spray it on a lot of, things like wheat or oats, it is extremely saturated into the grain. Like I think the latest study is that Cheerios is the highest glyphosate food in the grocery store. And that's just because oats like soak up glyphosate so much, as opposed to if you're eating like a banana per se, the peel of the banana is kind of protecting the banana from getting so much glyphosate to the inside of it. But unfortunately, grains get extremely bogged down with this, and it is a huge trigger for leaky gut and a lot of the reason that we have trouble with grains in this country. But we can, go to Italy and eat them just fine because glyphosate is illegal in a lot of other countries. Right. So yeah, like I said, your gut and your brain are very much related. Your gut is in charge of making like 70% of your serotonin, which is your happy hormone. It's responsible for creating about 80% of your immune system. It is a very important barrier for us from the outside world. And it is in constant communication with the brain because the gut bacteria tells the brain what we crave, and then the brain tells you what to eat. And then we get this like never ending cycle. So we want it to be a positive cycle and not a negative one that's actually deteriorating our tissues. But like I said, lectins are usually the main negative chemical for this cycle. So the brain and the small intestine bacterial overgrowth are like a highly linked thing, because unfortunately, a lot of brain injuries is what causes SIBO. So a lot of concussions, that type of thing. And it's because of something called your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve comes out of the middle of the neck and goes down to the rest of the body. It mostly controls our digestion. So when the brain gets messed with, that vagus nerve doesn't work, and then we don't get enough movement and we don't get enough blood flow to our intestine. And the lack of movement and lack of blood flow to the intestine are huge triggers for that small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So if that's something that, you were reading that slide and feeling like, oh my gosh, yeah, I definitely have a lot of these symptoms. A lot of these are triggers for me. I do notice that all these things happen when I eat, higher sugar, higher carb foods. You may need to do what we call vagal nerve exercises in order to heal it, in order to get better. So vagal nerve exercises, I don't have on here, but one of the great one is walking. Walking is a huge trigger for our parasympathetic nervous system while also pumping blood and getting circulation to our organs. Gargling water while singing happy birthday can help stimulate this nerve. Anything from like acupuncture to getting adjusted to massage, like really anything that influences the muscles of the front of the neck are really great for stimulating this nerve. I know every time I get, massage, chiropractic, acupuncture, I can actually hear my stomach moving afterwards because this nerve gets so much attention during those types of therapies that it really can help stimulate our digestion and get things moving. You can do different neck flexion exercises on your own, or just use different, massage pillows at home, hot, cold, just like anything to stimulate those muscles is going to be helpful for your vagus nerve. Singing very loudly stimulates it. When you're brushing your teeth, trying to like test your gag reflex can be helpful because a lot of people will have no gag reflex that have small intestine bacterial overgrowth, and that can be an issue. So it's almost like you need to rebuild it. Coffee enemas work fabulously for this, especially if you have severe constipation. I'm a huge fan of implementing those because they will actually help to retone the muscles of your intestines after they've been not working for a while. And then the last one is just be careful with mouthwash because there's a lot of mouthwash like Listerine that's more like an antibiotic. And if you're chronically using, an antibiotic type mouthwash, then you can kill your good gut bacteria. Same things goes with like bubble gum. If you're having, too much gum chewing with too many of these like neutralizing, antibiotic type chemicals in them, you can be inadvertently killing some of your gut bacteria just by trying to have good uh, health. So be careful if you're a mouthwash addict. But those are the different foods that can trigger gut problems and inflammation. Like I said, a lot of these are quote unquote healthy foods, and some of them we will be gradually re-adding back in next month. But you really want to pay attention to some of these symptoms to see if it's a food that you need to eliminate long term or not. Because maybe you do notice that when you eat lectin type foods, your brain fogs up, or if you eat too much sugar, your stomach is severely bloated to the point where you can't function. There's going to be some foods that maybe you just want to not have around your house long term. But the point of this program is to eliminate all the offenders so that way when we do gradually add them back in, you can recognize what they're doing to your body and know which ones are maybe not right for you long term to avoid a lot of your symptoms and pitfalls. So I hope that this was super helpful for all of you guys. And we're going to get that ended.